what was meant to be a final examination in physics at the government girls' secondary school in the town of Chibok, Borno State, Nigeria, on the night of April 14 to 15, 2014, ended up leading to the kidnapping of 276 girls. Out of the numbers kidnapped, 57 escaped captivity after jumping from the trucks on which they were being transported. About 107 of the girls were later released, 16 were rescued by the military, and 96 are still reportedly missing.
Meanwhile, the Murtala Muhammed Foundation, MMF, says that 10 years after the abduction of 276 girls from Chibok Girls Secondary School in Borno State, 21 of the affected abductees so far released came with 34 children. Johansson is here this morning and is joined by Dr. Aisha Mohammed Oyebode, who's the CEO of Murtala Muhammed Foundation. Good morning, Johansson.
Well, thank you so much, Oliver Nosage. Well, this morning I will be joined by Dr. Aisha Mohammed Oyebode. Now, she is part of the persons, the human rights activists who have been at the forefront to ensure that the Chibok girls are brought back. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been 10 years since the abduction of 276 girls from their secondary school. Can you share with us what thoughts this brings back to your mind, looking at 10 years later?
I think it's exceptionally sad. I don't imagine then when it happened that 10 years later we'll still be talking about 91 girls still being unaccounted for. I think that is what is frightening about it. I feel that if 10 years after we could categorically say this is where the 91 girls are, give or take, without being, exact, then there will be a sense that we've actually come to grips with the situation. We're behaving exactly 10 years later the way we behaved 10 years ago. Everything seems to be in a state of flux, and it's almost like we're winging the situation as we go along. We don't have a post-abduction protocol. We don't have any intelligence or a protocol for how we're going to. We don't have a roadmap for finding the 91 girls. We don't have a roadmap for communicating with the families. We don't have even a roadmap for dealing with the girls. You understand where I'm going with this? You have a situation where at least 1/3 of the girls may have been killed, right? Girls have come back and said so. There's a list, you understand, and none of that has been communicated to the parents. No decision has actually been taken as to how that's going to be communicated. And then everybody seems to be operating in silos. I might be wrong. Maybe it's a communication issue, but the state government is operating as a silo. The federal government is operating as a silo. I believe elements of the military are operating as silos. We have a women's affairs ministry that may be operating as a silo. So you're seeing a lack of cohesiveness. How do we want to manage that? But the most traumatic thing is that since Chibok, at least 1,700 children have been abducted from Nigeria's schools. This was based on a report that was released by Amnesty International. It is unacceptable. How do we not learn from something? Our children are the most valuable asset we have. How are we not able to protect them in their schools? It's just heartbreaking.
Well, the governor of Borno State, Governor Babagana Zulum, has promised to bring back the girls. And it's part of his promise, the promise that he made while looking at 10 years after. What's your thought on that promise made by the governor?
If he can do that, it will be fantastic. And in truth, we have had wins. Because in 2016, when the first Chibok girl came out, we had almost 2 years of no news. Nobody knew where they were. And since then, at least, 128 of them have come out. We still have 91 in captivity. So in that regard, yes, his response is a good one. But I think that it's time for there to be much better communication around this. April, I always tell people, April is one of the most challenging months for me and for a lot of us who are involved with this work, because the parents are in a state of despair. The 91 children is a lot of children. I tell people, every time I have this interview, you're sitting in your car. If somebody removed 91 parts from your car is not going to move. Do you understand? And somebody who's talking to me from their library, if you take out 91 books, these are 91 human beings. And be rest assured, for every one Chibok girl that is missing, there are at least 9-10 other girls from other communities that we're not talking about. So yes, if he makes through his promise, perfect. But that is what we would like to hear. And it would be nice if there was a roadmap to making true that promise.
Now, we do understand that the parents are also part of this. And what do you think can be done for the parents?
So, to begin with, in the last 10 years, the foundation, the Murtala Muhammed Foundation, released a report 3 days ago. 48 parents have died. 3 were killed by Boko Haram. The remaining died from high blood pressure, all of those ailments that have to do with a lot of stress. 48 parents have died. In fact, one of the saddest ones, in the girls that were abducted, there are 4 families that lost 2 daughters each. Okay, the only family that actually recovered both, almost 5 years apart. When the second girl came, a few months after her father died. So you can imagine what these people are going through. That's the first thing. The second thing is, honestly, we don't have a post-abduction protocol. I don't know if you're familiar with the fact that now the parents are having this long-running battle with the state government about the girls who have chosen to stay with their captors. I'm not making a judgment either way, because this thing, really the responsibility falls on us. We allowed those girls to stay too long in Boko Haram captivity. You have girls, if you imagine a 13-year-old girl coming back at 23, she very much has lived half her life with insurgents. So I'm not making a judgment whether that choice makes sense or not, because that has to be left to the experts. That has to be left to the psychologists and the psychiatrists, who are going to have to take it all apart. But I can tell you one thing, though, is that it must be really hard for a parent to say, because those girls left as adolescents, they were still at that age where they still needed a lot of guidance from their parents, and they were taken away to a group that everybody knows is particularly violent. They have come back. I have girls who have come back with 4 children. Our report also shows that a total number of 34 children were born to the Chibok girls. They came back with 34 children. I mean, you need to understand what these parents are going through. They're traumatized, really traumatized. So I think there has to be a lot more communication. There has to be a lot more empathy. There has to be a lot more concern. There has to be a lot more care. And I know that there will be the whole argument that, yes, maybe we should face looking for the children first, but it's not a one thing that solves a problem. You have to take a holistic approach. We need to tend to the children. We need to tend to the I'm talking about the Chibok girls themselves. We need to tend to their children. We need to tend to their parents. Do you understand what I'm saying? And in all of this, we also have to understand that, truthfully, those girls have now come back as adults, and they've come back with children. And anybody that knows what parental instinct does, it brings in a totally different line of thinking. So these are all the things that we need to take into account when we are trying to see how do we resolve their trauma, how do we help them cope, because that's one of the things that we need to help them do. And by the way, there's a lot of stigma. There's a lot of stigma for kids whose parents whose children have come back with children. A lot of stigma for those whose children have not come back because they are being taunted as being parents of Boko Haram wives. So there's just so much that's going on here. But the other thing we've done is we've truncated these children's education. Girls who are coming back 10 years after, really, what is the plan? Most of them, I'm sure, are going to find it difficult at this particular time to go to school, right? But 10 years after, it's a very complex situation, and we have to acknowledge the complexity of it. I think trying to give a linear, simple solution to a complex problem is just going to put us in trouble.
I'd like to say thank you very much, Dr. Aisha Mohammed Oyebode, for joining us in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.